Hi there, it's your girl Z from TransVoiceLessons.com, and today we are going to talk about heat from fire. Why is it a meme? Where did it come from? Why did I use it? Why do other people use it? Today we're going to talk about all that and more, so stick around and hit that follow button. So first off, it's a total accident that it even became this popular. I actually started using it on accident. I got hired for a voice acting job where I was supposed to read a poem and transition from a feminine voice to a masculine voice over the duration of the poem. And what I was finding is that when I would record that poem, every time I would read the line that said heat from fire, fire from heat, I felt like my voice would go more feminine than what I intended it to go. Now, this was actually awesome, but since the point of the project was to record this in a very smooth transition, it was kind of frustrating. So I ended up taking that phrase and using it in a lot of different ways. When I would play video games and practice my voice, that became my mantra phrase. I would say that, then I would hit push to talk, and then I would try to maintain that sound as much as I could when I would talk to people. So it became sort of my reset phrase. It's actually an excerpt from about a 450-year-old poem called Wilt Thou Unkind Thus Grieve Me, published by John Dowland in 1597. The memes on this absolutely kill me. I see it in all kinds of unexpected places. I've seen it on different subreddits. I've seen it on different TikToks. I've seen people talk about it in real life. It blows my mind that it has even became this big of a meme. Honestly, I think it's awesome. If it helps you, feel free to use it. If it's something that you find is beneficial in your practice, that's wonderful. I mean, I started saying it because it would feminize my voice on accident when I was reading that poem. But also, I just really love the symbolism of it. It's almost like that circular Ouroboros type thing. And I do tend to think of sound and music as a form of magic. And so it's really kind of poetic that that phrase found me. And I'm really happy to share it with everyone else. And I'm glad it's made an impact. Another thing I'd like to do here is a phonetic analysis of heat from fire, which can answer some questions about why the phrase seems to be useful for people. So first off, if we just have the basic phrase here just spoken, heat from fire, fire from heat. Okay, and if we start to break that down and understand it sound by sound, let's see what we get. So it starts with an H sound, which is a voiceless glottal fricative, and this is acting as a transition into the vowel E. This is really useful because it's teaching us one primary way of onsetting our voice and starting our voice. Oftentimes, breathy onsets when people practice can be really problematic and cause a lot of bad behaviors. So starting with one here can be quite useful in making sure that those are developing in a positive way. That H sound transitions into the E vowel, which is a close front vowel. It's a pretty important vowel because it's really going to define the minimum amount of mouth size that you allow your voice to have in it. So, you can practice with different sizes here while you're practicing that. Also, the E vowel has a tendency to make the throat larger, and in feminization, we are trying to keep the throat smaller. So starting right off with this vowel can be very useful. Now, this part is so important. People will normally think this says heat, but actually when we speak it in context, we do not get that T. Instead of a T sound, we get a glottal stop, which is really cool because you're starting this right here with a breathy onset, and then you're ending this with a blocked offset. So it already challenges you with, one type of onset that's the opposite of the offset. And that can be really useful for developing more nuanced glottal control while you're trying to keep your resonance high and your vocal tract small. Often when someone goes to feminize the voice and reduce the vocal tract, it can create some unwanted constriction or irregular vocal behaviors. And so having a breathy onset and a blocked release, or a blocked onset and a breathy release, and having these different combinations can act as a really useful checkpoint to make sure there's none of this unwanted constriction or unnatural sound production behavior. Okay, and in the second word, we have starting with this F sound. This is a voiceless labiodental fricative, and it's actually quite different between masculine and feminine speakers. We tend to see this sound being formed by feminine speakers much higher in terms of frequency content, and so it's quite useful to practice. This F sound, or labiodental fricative, has some really important co-articulatory behaviors that make a big impact in the rest of the voice across the board as well. Following this F sound, we have a voiced alveolar approximant, which is basically a fancy way of saying the R sound on its own. And this is super important. These R sounds form fundamental movements in the voice, and learning to feminize them is really important. This one in particular can be used to practice where you form it. So like we're looking to form it in a similar way, but we'll want the entire body of the tongue to be a little bit more forward if we want the mouth space to be smaller, or a little bit further back if we want the mouth space to be larger. That sound then bridges and connects with a schwa, or the mid-central unrounded vowel. This is the most common vowel in American English dialect, and it is incredibly important to learn to feminize. So already we have a really important F sound consonant, we have this R color, which is really useful, and then the most common vowel, which we really need to get under our belt. This word then wraps up with a bilabial nasal. So you close your lips and you open up your velum or soft palate to go a little bit nasal. And this whole combination is really useful to practice. Lastly, and most importantly, this word fire has so much phonetic utility. So first, it starts with an F sound, which we already talked about why that can be useful. But then it moves into a diphthong, which connects two vowels together. I. So you don't just practice one vowel or two vowels, you're actually practicing the connection between them. And if that wasn't enough, you then have this schwa vowel, which is rhoticized with an R color. So you end up sort of transitioning between 3 or 4 different sounds. Fire. And so you're actually practicing this really dynamic micro movement of your resonance. And it sounds like these are some of the most useful to practice because they really let you flesh out the identity of your speech. Co-articulating across this phrase with a sound that you like is actually teaching you tons of nuanced little tongue and mouth and vocal tract behaviors, which really form like you spinning out a melody of resonance while you're speaking. Oh, and we can't forget, this phrase is actually a palindrome. Now, of course, it's not a true phonetic palindrome because it doesn't reverse the sounds or anything, but it does reverse the word orders, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, and then 3, 2, 1. I really love this because it takes the nuance from the first phrase and it lets you have it again, but only you get entirely new connections, right? Connecting the rhoticized into the F, you're connecting the nasal into the glottal fricative, and lastly, this glottal stop now becomes a phrase final glottal stop, as opposed to sort of in the middle of the phrase. So yeah, I hope you enjoy that phonetic breakdown of heat from fire, fire from heat. So that's all for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to post down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to check us out on Patreon. And otherwise, thank you all so much for being here. Take care and bye.